All right, cool. I think we can get started. My name is Michael Radfar. I am one of the founders at Holsey, and I want to thank you all for joining the third in our series of guest speaker events. For those who are not familiar with Holsey, we exist to support this community in our collective journey to becoming emotionally fit and spiritually grounded. I want to give a quick shout out to all the Holsey members that are here in the crowd. It's because of you guys that this event is possible, that we're able to host events like this for the larger community. So thank you so much. As a member, you get access to Holsey's monthly guides, this incredible community, got a little bit of backstage access to these thinkers, and we explore topics like creativity, resilience, and you can learn all more about that at holsey.com. And now for our featured guest, I'm so excited to introduce you to Kim Forrester. Kim is a dear friend. She's also an award-winning author, a holistic well-being educator. She blends science with spiritual philosophy, which feels very Holsey-ish. But she's going to take us in a direction today that we haven't really gone too much at Holsey. It's one that I'm personally curious about. Her most recent book, Infinite Mind, is a collection of true psychic experiences and the modern research that is just coming about to explain these phenomena. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kim, and looking forward to a wonderful session today.
Oh, Michael, it's just such a delight to be here, and greetings from New Zealand. Firstly, I see that there are a few of us from Commonwealth countries here on the call, so I just want to take a brief moment to send our love and respect to our beautiful, gracious Queen as she passes into the veil today. So I just want to take a moment to honour this beautiful woman who has served for us and watched over us for the last 70 years. From there, so I am a New Zealander, which is why you can hear this funny accent. But for those of you who are maybe in Australia or New Zealand, you're going, that's not quite a New Zealand accent, and that's because I've recently returned to Aotearoa, New Zealand, after 20 years abroad, and I do see some very familiar names there, so it's a delight to have my gorgeous friends and clients and followers from all over the world on the call here as well. Really excited to be sharing this discussion with you because it's something that's really close to my heart. I have in the past, for about 20 years now, I've actually served as a professional intuitive reader, a psychic reader, if you will. We're going to talk about that word a little bit later. And then very early on in my career, though, I started to feel that I was not particularly special, that there was something more going on, and I was out there looking to see what was truly going on in this space. And that's when I found the science behind it, and the whole universe opened up for me. And one of my greatest passions is actually getting people to understand how well the idea of psychic phenomenon, sixth sense, gut instinct, how well it actually fits into our modern and growing understanding of the universe. So that's where we're going to go today. For a start, though, very interactive. You will not be sitting idly. I will be asking for you to participate. Please don't feel that you have to. Of course, you're safe, you're among friends, but the more that you can participate in the exercises and the questions, the more you're going to get from this presentation. Just grateful that you are all here and that you've tuned in. So my gratitude and love to you all. Let's start though by having a little bit of an exercise. This one's a nice simple one. If you can just pop in the chat, if you feel comfortable doing so, share it with everyone. If not, just share it with me. And I'd love to know the words that come to mind, a little bit of a word association game. Share the word or words that come to mind when I say the word psychic. If you can just kindly share in the chat what it is, what the connotations are of that word for you. Don't be shy, everyone. Excellent. Thank you, Deanna. Awesome, Abigail. Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, Carol. Excellent, Wanda. Oh, Mark, awesome. Katie, beautiful. Lani. Hi, Najib, thank you. Oh, okay, excellent. Rachel. Hi, O'Leary, thank you. Deanna. Oh, love this. Miss Katz. Sveen, is that how I pronounce your name? I do apologise. Space. Oh, I'm loving these words. And I see that overwhelmingly we seem to have, well, certainly the people who are happy to share here are those who already have an inkling, a curiosity, or perhaps have had some personal experiences in the space. So welcome to you. It's okay for those of you, you know, if you haven't written a word down, it might be that you're skeptical and the words that you might have in your mind are like fraud or fake or, you know, impossible. Those words are equally as valid as the ones that were written down here today. Beautiful. I love that. Some of you, yes, Michael, your Holsty community are obviously deeply connected and, you know, to themselves and to a source, the words that are popping up here. So as I say, any of the words that you use here are truly, truly valid. They'll be based on your worldview. They'll be based on the experiences that you've had in the past, particularly the experiences that you've had in the past. What I'm going to do with you here today is share with you as impartially and as truthfully as possible what we currently know about what we've called psychic ability, sixth sense, these phenomena, what we currently know in terms of science. So I certainly, in my work, I certainly do not dismiss the spiritual teachings that we've had in the past, but it's really interesting that when you start laying those teachings and philosophies side by side with the science, you can see that they're actually speaking a very similar language. And I imagine as time goes by, those languages will only become more similar over time. What I find in my work, though, because I straddle science and spirituality, is that I'm often annoying either one side or the other, or maybe both. So if you are skeptical and have not any reason to believe that these phenomena are real in any way, then my work and my message may cause you to come into a discomfort zone where you're being asked to open your worldview a little bit and understand that science is constantly evolving and that we have a new understanding of the way the universe works. If you are someone who's deeply embedded in spiritual philosophy and spiritual practice, it may also be that the stories you have inherited that you've come to regard as true may also need to be tweaked and may also need to be sometimes even set aside because we now have science that is starting to show us how this works, who it works within, and why it works. So regardless of what comes up today, I may make you uncomfortable. And I'm going to ask you just to trust me as we go through that process. Know that I'm here with absolute good faith. I'm here to be as truthful as possible, share with you what we now know as a collective, and hopefully empower and inspire you in that way. So this here is a painting of an astronomy event, a meteor shower, back in the 1800s. And I share this because I'm a bit of a storyteller. I love to teach through stories. At the end of the 18th century, particularly throughout France and Germany, there seemed to be a lot of focus on meteor showers. Something phenomenal was happening, you know, in the sky over Europe at that time, and all throughout France and Germany and in those surrounds, Western Europe. There were peasants and villagers, and sometimes even the mayor of a village or a town would go to the Académie de Sciences in Paris, and they would explain that they kept seeing rocks falling from the sky. And as you can imagine, this being this late 1700s, the scientists at the Académie de Sciences in Paris were not particularly interested in hearing about rocks falling from the sky because the earth was flat and the sky was nothing but a dome with holes printed into it, and the earth was the center of the universe. So there was no scientific framework within which rocks could fall from the sky. So obviously now that we know, well, let's go back, because every time the villagers would go and say, this is what we have experienced and this is what we have seen with our own eyes, the researchers and the very serious scientists at the Académie de Sciences would literally poo-poo them. They would ridicule them and send them away and say, you are a fake, you are a fraud, or you're losing your mind. There is no way that this can happen within the framework of our science as we know it today. well, of course, as we know it now in the 21st century, we have a complete understanding of how and why meteors fall. So I just want to share that story with you because it's a great way to remind us that science is a way, and scientific discovery is a way for us to explain the universe as we currently know it. So in the 18th century, rocks falling from the sky did not fall into the scientific framework as it was currently known by those who were clever and did all the research. Even throughout the 20th century, things like psychic phenomena did not fit into the scientific framework. And so we had stories of, of fake and fraudulence and impossibility. Of course we did, because we couldn't explain it within the scientific framework. Now, science is evolving and will continue to evolve, and we're at a really exciting threshold now where science is building a framework that they didn't build the framework around psychic phenomena per se, but what's happened is as they've built the framework around other discoveries such as quantum physics and consciousness, they have found that these phenomena that we regarded as impossible naturally align to the new framework. So regardless of if you are an absolute believer, okay, and so you might have used words like the crystal ball was a fabulous version there, word there, and intuitive and tapping into source. Or if you are a skeptic, and the words that you sort of align more with are, impossible, fake, fraud, it doesn't matter. I'm going to ask you to listen with an open mind today. To start, we're just going to go on a little bit of an inner reflective journey. Now, most of you hopefully are in a nice sort of quiet space where you can partake in this fully. If you're in a more public space, just try your best to run through this. The reason for this exercise will become clear a little bit later on, and the deeper you can go now, the more power it will have for you later on. So I'm going to ask you just now to sit back, relax. Let's just let everything go. Take a deep breath. You don't have to sit up straight or lie, or you can just be however you want to be at this moment. Just be nice and comfortable. And if and when you feel comfortable, take a deep breath. Close your eyes if you can, if you feel comfortable doing so. If not, just let your eyes go nice and relaxed. Let your focus relax, because we're going to turn inward for a little while. That's it. We're just going to slow down into the pace of this exercise. Nice and gentle. Steady breathing. We're going to set our mind aside just for a little bit and become more aware of what's going on in our inner space, in our inner world. What I want you to do now is quietly, gently turn your attention to your physical body. And I want you just to become aware of what is happening in your physical body right now. It's okay to label anything that's happening. You might say, I feel cold, or I feel pain, or maybe for those of you in California, you might be feeling warmth at the moment. Just notice and label anything going on in your physical body right now. What I don't want you to do is judge it. Let it be. There is no right or wrong way of being in a physical sense. Let's just find out where your body is in this moment. That's it. When your body has no pressures on it, nowhere to be, nothing being asked of it. How does your body feel? Feel the temperature of your skin. Do you feel energized or quiet and zen-like? Do you feel tired? Do you feel pressure or sensation or pain on any parts of your body? Once again, there is no reason for this exercise other than to just observe and label what's happening. Excellent. Now take that beautiful awareness that you've just created with your body, and I want you to turn it to your emotions, towards that heart area where we feel our emotions most strongly. Now on the surface, there'll be all sorts of daily emotion. There's been a lot happening. Some of us have lost a monarch today, and there's a sadness there. Some of you will be worried about things going on in your daily life. Some of you may have just received some wonderful news and be feeling joyful. So feel those emotions. And then I'm going to ask you to go a step deeper. Because underneath those daily reactive emotions, there is a gentle stream of emotion that represents who you are right now in your life. What is that emotion? And once again, there is no judgment at all. You are perfect and beautiful in every state of being. All we want to find is your default emotion at this point. Is it grief? Is it contentment? Is it joy? Is it anxiety? What is it that bubbles under the surface of your daily emotions? Observe it, label it, and now we'll move on. Finally, let's take this beautiful awareness you have, this inner awareness, and turn it to the state of your mind. I don't necessarily want you to capture thoughts and follow them down their path, but pay attention to the vibrancy of your mind, to the activity and energy within your mind. How is your mind working right now? Is it still like a crystal clear pond? Are thoughts flowing in and out like clouds across the sky? Is it a ball of neurons and energy? Is your mind firing off quick shot thoughts left, right, and center? Every way is perfect. I just want you to tune in, observe the way your mind is working right now. And now come back to me. When you're ready, just carry that beautiful awareness back into the space. We're going to play a little bit with that exercise later on today. Let's get back into our discussion. On the screen here, we've got 4 historical figures. So we've got Abraham Lincoln, Russell Targ, Estee Lauder, and Winston Churchill. My question to you is, which one of these famous people openly, publicly used their gut instinct or their sixth sense? Okay, which one of these famous figures here openly and publicly used, talked about, and promoted that inner GPS that we're talking about today? Let me know in the chat. Well, we've got some very tuned in people here on the call, because of course the answer is all of them. Every single one of the people there on the screen used their intuition, not just used their intuition, but then publicly spoke about it. So Abraham Lincoln here, he's most famous for actually dreaming about his own assassination. A very melancholy man, was prone to depression, also incredibly tuned in to his sixth sense, and would often get information, as I say, through his dreams. He dreamt of his own assassination. He had previous dreams that told him that he was going to do one full term in his presidency and then not live out the fullness of his second presidency. Of course, he was assassinated soon after being inaugurated into his second term. Russell Targ is an astrophysicist, and worked on the NASA program for a couple of decades. He's also a psi researcher. Now, I'm going to use the word psi today. We're talking about connotations before. Researchers have taken away the words that we used to associate with this kind of phenomena, words like, well, supernatural for a start, because they believe now it's supremely natural. The paranormal, and para means to be above, there's or apart from, there's nothing apart from with these phenomena. So extra sensory perception, these senses are not necessarily extra. So the word psychic has a lot of connotation about fraudulent activity, absolute fraudulent activity, which we'll talk about reasons why later. So researchers use the word psi, P-S-I, psi. It's actually a letter in the Greek alphabet, and it is a letter and a word that refers to the soul, which is why it's also the root of the word psychology, psyche, psychic. So I'm going to use the word psi because let's just talk about a 21st century form of this phenomena. So that said, Abraham Lincoln incredibly tapped into the psi phenomena that came to him through his dreams. Russell Targ, psi researcher, has written an incredible book that I've done a lot of research from, went on, so stopped being a physicist and then carried on being a psi researcher and has provided a lot of wonderful insights. Estee Lauder was well known by her family and friends to use her gut instinct when it came to a fragrance. Her son actually said after her passing that regardless of what the market analysts would say or the business analysts or the reports, he would back his mum's sixth sense when it came to choosing what would be a popular fragrance. And it is absolutely no mistake or coincidence that two of her fragrances are called Intuition and Knowing. And that was a nod to the way that she actually formulated her most popular fragrances. And of course, Winston Churchill was not just incredibly attuned to psi phenomena, but he actually was an active and very eager promoter, an active member and eager promoter of the mystical movement in the UK during his lifetime. So what do we know? We know now that there are historical figures that have openly promoted and used these instincts and this information. We know that more than 75% or around 75% of the population say they've had some kind of experience like this. We know these are older surveys now, but of the surveys that are out there, we know that about 68% of Western populations say they believe in this kind of phenomena. Now, I use the word believe because you don't have to believe in something that has been proven to be real, but that's the transition that we're currently in. Of course, I think in Eastern cultures and certainly in Indigenous cultures, the percentage of people who accept these phenomena in their lives as being real and useful is much, much higher because Indigenous science and Eastern science did not divorce humanity from the natural environment and natural instincts and stuff. So when I say 68%, that's definitely those who are of so European and colonized countries. What do we know about psi today? Well, the first thing that we know is that it exists. And this is very hard for people to come to grasp sometimes, but those who adhere to the materialistic view of the world and have been taught all their lives that this is fake, fraudulent, impossible, sometimes even evil, it can be very, very difficult for the human mind to accept new ideas, new concepts, particularly when those new ideas and those new concepts are going to actually shift the universe within which you live. However, empirical science has proven, to the same standard that any other science we have today has been proven, right, that every human being on the planet appears to have the ability to see beyond space-time sometimes. I've got a little quote here I wanted to share with you because there are several quotes floating around there about people, including skeptics, who are admitting, okay, we kind of have to regard it as proven. But this quote's from Jessica Utz. She is Emerita Professor of Statistics at the University of California, Irvine. And she is the former president of the American Statistical Association. And this is what she wrote in 1995. And so there's a lot of science since then, but in 1995 she wrote, using the standards applied to any other area of science, it is concluded that psychic functioning has been well established. The statistical results of the studies examined are far beyond what is expected by chance. So in many of these studies, the results are only a few percentage points off chance, but that is statistically significant. So it's going to take a while for this information to filter through into the common psyche. It's going to take a while for some people, if ever, to accept it as a reality in their own mind and their own psychology. However, if we are going to hold science to be the benchmark by which we regard things as possible or impossible, we have to regard psychic ability, psi phenomena, as entirely possible and ubiquitous amongst the human population. So what are the theories bubbling up behind this evidence that has come about? Well, at first, let's sort of cast our mind back first to the 20th century. And at the end of the 19th century and then last century, there were a lot of experiments going on trying to figure out, how did telepathy work, what was remote viewing, being able to see something from a long distance. Unfortunately, because of the scientific framework of the time, researchers were looking for some kind of radio wave because that was the technology that was, the most advanced at the time. And of course, they never found any form of radio wave or telegraph wave or so the experiments continually failed. We weren't asking the right questions, and therefore we were never going to find the right answers. In the late 20th century, there was a swing towards quantum physics, and quantum physicists, I think they crumble at the thought of quantum physics being used as the sort of the general brush of explanation for psychic phenomena. So there was a wave of understanding. There were theories starting to evolve that maybe our ability to connect with each other across distance or through time and space, what came down to quantum entanglement, what Albert Einstein called spooky action at a distance. We now know that two particles of the universe can actually engage in correlative behavior without any seeming communication between the two. So, and they've tried this into outer space. They've sent particles into outer space and created entangled particles. They split and they send into different parts of our atmosphere or whereabouts. They create a particular reaction in one of the particles, and the other particle will instantly show a correlative action. So that's where we kind of were at about 20, 30 years ago. They went, oh, it must be quantum entanglement. What's interesting is that even in that time, since I've started studying this stuff, the theories are starting to change. And I'm just going to come back to that idea that like the meteors, right? Like the understanding that meteors were real and that meteors fell from the sky, that was part of a greater shift in understanding within humanity. It explained more than just that rocks can fall from the sky. It started explaining more around the earth, how it sat in the solar system, how it's sat in the universe. In the same way, these theories that are actually bubbling up are asking us to expand our understanding of the whole universe. Where we're at now, where researchers are at now, is the understanding that it may all boil down to our consciousness. In the same way that we have got, different levels of consciousness when we sleep, in fact, the various levels of consciousness when we sleep, there is now a growing understanding. There's a fabulous project that's been running since the 1990s called the Global Consciousness Project, which and other experiments which are pointing to the idea, a very robust theory, that we seem to have a super consciousness as well, and where our consciousness is one, where it is entwined. Already you can see echoes of spiritual teachers and philosophers through the eons saying that we are actually one, and what you do to others you're doing to yourself. Well, science now is starting to thank you, Najib. Indeed, dreams. Well, I'll get to dreams in a minute, absolutely, because when we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about the different ways that we can actually receive this information. What do we know? So we theorize now. We theorize. I'm not doing any of the theorizing. I'm reading the researchers who are doing all the hard work. Just last month, I listened to a theoretical physicist called Joachim Kepler, and he has actually built sort of this theory of everything around how our universe works and what it's made of. I won't bore you all with, well, it's not even boring, it's fascinating, but we don't have time to go into the details here. There is a growing understanding, or at least a growing question, around where consciousness sits in the hierarchy of our universe. We have gone for the last 400 years since Newton believing that physical form is the foundational basis of our universe, and that from that you've got chemistry, and from chemistry you get biology, and from biology you get things like the brain, and consciousness sort of pops out the top. Now there's a huge problem with that, because nobody knows the complexity around which biology becomes consciousness. Then there was panpsychism, was another theory where it was posited that every particle in the universe actually contains a little particle of consciousness, and so therefore that would get as a huge nod to our Indigenous brothers and sisters who would tell us, who would teach us that there is consciousness in every rock and every tree and every mountain. And there's also, as exciting and vibrant as that theory sounds, there are concerns around the complexity, once again, of when does a conscious rock sort of move into a conscious worm, and move into a conscious dog, into a conscious human, etc. Kepler has come up with an idea, with a theory, which he has measured up against some of the latest research and knowledge in all the other sort of scientific fields, including neuroscience. And his theory is that that the material universe is actually it's like a double-sided phenomena. And on one side you have material, and on the other side of that exact form in the universe is consciousness. And so Joachim Kepler is his name, if you would like to learn a little bit more about his theory. there was a video at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and he went through how consciousness is embedded in our physical universe, and therefore as you get more complex physical forms, you end up with more complex conscious forms as well. Right. That's where we're at scientifically. It sits well within the realm of possibility, and it is truly shaking up this idea of materialism here in the world. What do we know? We know that the information that we get arrives as data, pure data, okay? The human mind loves to create frames of reference. The human mind loves to create stories. So when we receive this data, it comes through into our unconscious, or maybe it's our superconscious. See, we're not quite sure. But somehow it gets filtered into our brain as pure data. Because the conscious brain is very, very has an affiliation with our preconceived ideas and biases, right? So the way that we see the world is not the way the world it is the way we expect the world to be. And so we can warp this information, and we often do as it comes through to us. For that reason, the most powerful, often the most common way that psi information comes into the human brain is when we are neutralizing the conscious brain. So when we are asleep, Najib, and the information comes through our dreams, when we are in meditation, which is why a lot of spiritual philosophers through the millennia have, often talked about being quiet or going into meditative states. Drumming is another way. I'll go to our Native American brothers and sisters who would go into these beautiful rituals and use drumming as a way to calm the conscious mind and allow that intuitive flow, that psi information to flow in. Now, because it is unconscious information, it is really important to understand that it can trigger processes that are unconscious in our body. So even before we're consciously aware of something, or even if we never become consciously aware of something, the unconscious processes in our body are picking up on this information and reacting to it. And we know this because it's in our language, well, in English, that I speak of in particular, because when we talk about, getting a gut instinct about something, we're literally talking about getting a gut instinct. It's in our gut, which is our digestive system, which is an unconscious process. We talk about, that person gives me the creeps. We're talking about our skin becoming really sensitive and starting to react, or maybe getting goosebumps, or the hairs on our necks or our arms standing up on end. So we've already embedded in our language the understanding that we are unconsciously aware of what's going on in our environment. And oftentimes that won't become consciously apparent to us, but our body, the unconscious processes in our body, are reacting to it. Feel it in my bones. Oh, I just feel it in my bones. I feel it in my waters. Yes, you do. Because your unconscious, the physiological processes in your body that are based on your unconscious mind are picking up on unconscious data and reacting to it. Powerful, right? Right? Really ought to be paying attention to our body. Now, our mind, our conscious mind, we have about 200,000 pieces of information going through our brain every second. We can only be aware, consciously aware, of about 0.05% of that information. We can't consciously compute 200,000 pieces of information every second. That's what babies do. And that's why babies are incoherent. They can't speak, they can't hold their body together, because they're trying to sort of gather in and process every piece of information that's in their environment and in their body. As adults, of course, we grow and we learn to filter out the information that is not pertinent to us, or that we feel is not pertinent to us. We have to narrow it down so that we can function in our day. What that means is that if psi awareness if premonitions, if psychic dreams, if telepathy, if picking up on information from the environment around you and through time and space, if that has not been a part of your experience as a child, if it was not pertinent to you as your mind was forming, you are likely to not be consciously aware of it now because your brain has already deemed it irrelevant, impossible, unnecessary, unhelpful. And there is actually a phenomena called the sheep-goat instinct that researchers openly talk about, where the sheep are believers in psychic ability and psi phenomena, and the goats are not. And whether you believe or not in this phenomena will literally change the way that you, the results that you get in your experiments. And by that, I mean people who believe that they can pick up this information will likely get more right answers than they ought to. They will be correct more times than they ought to by chance. Those who do not believe in the process, it's not that they get chance, they don't just get like a 50-50 result at the end of it. They will actually use this information to be wrong more often than they ought to. What does that mean? Well, when I was learning to be psychic, I would do little tests for myself, and I would choose which line at the checkout was going to be fastest. And I would say, well, I'm going to use my intuition, and I'm going to tune in, and I'm going to choose that particular line there. And inevitably, I'd end up in the slowest line. There was a part of my conscious brain that did not believe that I could do it. I believed in it, but I didn't believe that I had the ability to choose to receive that kind of information and use it in a helpful way. So I would get the information, my conscious brain would go, oh, well, let's make sure you're wrong, because we want to absolutely adhere to your previous biases. And so that's what would happen. Now, here's a really important thing, particularly for those of you who have been deeply embedded or have had experiences on the spiritual side of the coin of the conversation here. This can be quite confronting, so please know that I talk about this with absolute love and respect and admiration for you all. The data that we receive is processed when it does become consciously present to us. If we pick up on something, oh, that is a conscious thought, I am now aware of information, and I'm getting information about that person or that thing or that future event. It has come through our conscious brain, and therefore it has been filtered through all of our preconceived ideas, our worldview, our beliefs, all of the information that we've picked up in our life before us, all of the frames of reference that we as an individual have in our life. And so that means that if you get information in your sleep, for instance, in a dream, oh, thank you, Nadim. When we get this information, a dream, for instance, if you have a frame of reference that is around spirit guides or angels, it is likely that your brain will present it to you in that way. It will present it to you in the form that will take this pure data from the universe and from your consciousness, and it will present it to you as an angel form or a spirit guide form. If you are more of an indigenous, come from a more indigenous background, and you have ideas of your ancestors bringing you information, or might be totem animals. It could be, look, it could literally be that that you feel that the leaves in the trees talk to you. If that is your true frame of reference, then that is how it is likely to present itself to you. Because our mind cannot formulate something. It cannot formulate an idea or a vision or an image or a sensation unless we have already experienced it before. It's really important for those who have already experienced this, who are embedded, as I say, in spiritual philosophy and spiritual practice, to release the idea that the information comes from a spirit guide or comes from a totem animal. the information comes to you in that form, because that is the way, that is the storyboard upon which your brain likes to write the messages, likes to share the information. And therefore, with love and compassion and understanding, we allow other people to experience it in their own way, with an understanding that we're tapping into the same source, exactly the same information. That's awesome. Exactly. So comes in dream as a spirit guide. So somewhere along in your experience there, it would be the form that is most familiar to you. It is the form that the dream is understandable. More than half of the world's spontaneous psi phenomena. So, okay, so more than half of the world population's psychic experiences and premonitions or knowings or telepathy actually comes while people sleep in their dreams. So the dream doesn't surprise me, and the spirit guide wouldn't surprise me if that is the frame of reference around you now. And I celebrate that for you. The wonderful thing is this is wisdom that flows to us. And I celebrate that wisdom in you and in me and in everybody. And I just also ask people to understand that the way it comes to you, the power is not necessarily in the form that it comes to you. The power is in that connection with the super consciousness, with the data itself. And therefore we can allow others to have their experience too. One important thing that we need to understand, we're kind of running out of time here, aren't we, Michael? We might just skip the next slide. We talk about clairvoyant, but clairvoyance is just one way that people receive information. So clairvoyance is seeing images. If you are very visually if you're very visually inclined, then your information will come through as images. Clairaudience is when you actually hear words, and often in your own inner monologue voice. This is often how I work with words, or you will hear words and sounds in your environment. Clairsentience is also me, where you feel the emotions. You might not see anything, which was me for many, many years, but you feel the emotions. If you're highly emotive, and then finally, the fourth clear is clear cognizance, which is just a knowing, an understanding. Can it be wrong? Yes, the information can be wrong. Our interpretation of the data can be wrong because we have to run it through our frames of reference. Also, the future is malleable. So the future is just a probability. So if you get information and you change your activities or your choices or your actions because of that information, then it is likely that you will have a different outcome to it. Can you win lotto? Some people do. Yes, some people do win lotto, but it's not a possibility for everyone. And there's a whole discussion there around, is our super consciousness also a super conscience, making sure that people don't use this information for greed. And look, there's a lot of stories about this in my book. If you're trying to figure out which clear is best for you, start with the way that you go through life and process life. So if you're a very visual person, if you learn visually, if you have a photographic memory, you're probably going to find that the information will come through to you as images and visions. Now, I've been like mostly blind most of my life, so I don't get visions. I don't remember visual things very well. For me, it's all about words. I can remember lyrics from songs from when I was 4 years old, not kidding, and I remember the sounds of people's voices. So often for me, the information is translated into thoughts and words and language. And I'm a highly sensitive person, so I get a lot of emotion. If you're looking for how the information is coming through for you, start with your natural cognitive strengths. But just quickly, because we've only got a few minutes left, we're running over, we're going to go back and do a really quick exercise. So I'm just going to ask you to slow down again. Take a deep breath, and I want you to just turn your awareness back into your body. If you can do this, if you're in a position where you can do so, take a deep breath, close your eyes, You turn your attention back into your body. All I want you to do now is just remember how you are in your default setting. Remember what your body feels like. Do you remember those physical sensations that are yours and yours alone? Remember that underlying flow of emotion that sits underneath your daily activities. Who are you in your heart and your emotional space when you are just being? And finally, just check in with your mind again. How is it working? Are the thoughts clear and smooth? Is it buzzing around your head? It's just my dog in the background, but I don't know. Okay. What I want you to do now, while you're just becoming more aware of your default physical, emotional, and mental state, I want you to turn your attention to the bag I am holding in my hand. Through the consciousness through which we are all connected, you know I'm holding a bag in my hand. And there is something, there's an object inside the bag that I'm holding in my hand. I don't want you to guess what it is. In fact, I really don't want you to guess what it is. I don't want you to even try. What I'm going to ask you to do is pay attention. You're now focusing on the object that is in the bag in my hand. Tell me about the changes in your body. Scan your body. Is it different? Does it feel different? Are you more energized? Less energized? Do not tell yourself a story about what is in the bag. I just want you to pay attention to your body and note the changes. Inward to your heart now. Looking into your emotions. You know how you were just a minute ago, but now you're focusing on the object in the bag in my hand. What emotions are bubbling to the surface now? How is it different from how you were before? And finally, your mind. If you have thoughts, words, if you have visions, images, colors, strange thoughts that pop out of the blue, note them. Don't judge them. Do not create a story around them. Just allow them to be and observe them. Has the speed of your mind changed? Are there thoughts that are popping in uninvited, but clearly? Just take note of any changes in your body, in your emotion, and in your mind. Any thoughts that come in an uninvited way, but are clear. We're not going to try and guess what it is. We're just going to note all of those changes, all of that information. And Michael is going to just pop up the next slide. What I want you all to do when you have a moment, when you're ready, is open your eyes. And from the information that you gained, from the information and the way that it changed your body, don't worry if it was just a subtle change. Don't worry if it was not what you were expecting. Any changes that happen in your body, your emotional state, or your mind, now see if you can apply them. Apply them to one of the objects on the screen. And I would really love it if you would share for me. which one you think it is. Well, we're running very slow on time, so I'm just going to do the big reveal. What is in here? And I'm not surprised. I actually chose some things to be very similar. So I want you to all know that it's the cat toys. I'm jingling because some of you might have heard a bell. Some of you might have seen a flash of orange or spherical. That could very easily be confused with broccoli because of the rounder shape and the texture of it. So I want you to know that. Also, some of you, if you're very clairsentient like I am, you may have felt the emotional change of maybe kittens. We had some foster kittens. And so you might have actually found yourself feeling playful or the feeling of being around something cute or loving. Did anyone have an experience like that where the emotion changed? So the American military ran a psychic spy program for a few decades through the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And a lot of research came out of these incredible, phenomenal men and women in the military who were doing psychic spying. And what they discovered was that it is best not to try and tell a story. You take the information, you take the data, because then you are bypassing your own biases. You're better at bypassing the frames of reference that you would associate with your personal life. So easier, therefore, more accurate, therefore, to sort of see if you can get pieces of information and then trying to put it together. Another thing is that our left brain, which controls our analytical brain, you know, it's not really the left brain, our left brain processes that control our analytics, language, spatial perception, all those kinds of things. It has to be shut down in order for this process to come through. So our psi information comes through as a creative flow, as an emotional flow, and, you know, it's a right brain process. So what these military psychic spies discovered was that they'd actually see windows, for instance, or they might have a building that was made up of lots of windows, but they'd just get lots of straight lines, vertical lines, and then separately lots of horizontal lines, and they wouldn't actually come together to form a window. So really, really fabulous. Aside from being open, they're practicing meditation reflection. If you really, really would love to explore this wisdom more, and it is, as I say, it is wisdom. So it's more than just, is my boyfriend cheating my meal, or is this job good for me? It is, what is best for me in my life right now? Who are the people who are going to nourish me in my future projects and creations? You know, all of those sorts of things can come, we can draw to us if we become more attuned to this. And I would say that an understanding and a belief, if you need to go and do more research so that you believe in this more, then please, I encourage you to do that, because you'll start switching your conscious brain to the idea that, oh, we can let this information and it's helpful and it's worthy. And the second thing, Michael, that you at Holsty offer, you know, in wonderful ways, is mindfulness and reflection. We must have quiet time to close down that conscious brain, the chatter of our left brain, so that we can sense and accept and reveal this information to ourselves. We've run a bit over time. There's so much information there. But if you want to know more, there are a few resources on the final slide that you can go and check out. I've written a lot of this kind of stuff. It's not science heavy. My book isn't Michael. It's not science heavy at all. So please check out Infinite Mind. And for those of you here and the Holsty community, there is a 20% discount at the moment for the next month if you follow the link that will be shared with you. So it's got wonderful, amazing, true stories of people, famous people, people you'll never know and never meet, people in history, people alive today. And then I share a little bits and little bites and digestible pieces, the science that helps us understand it. My research has been taken largely from the work of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. That was actually founded by the astronaut Edgar Mitchell after he landed back from Apollo 14 trip to the moon. He had an experience himself on that trip, and he felt that he wanted to explore consciousness more deeply in an empirically scientific way. So Dean Radin is an amazing researcher, and he's very humorous and informative in the way that he shares this information. And Rupert Sheldrake is a British biologist who has a theory called morphic resonance, and helping understand more around consciousness, our connection with each other through consciousness, our connection through space-time, and how that fits into our understanding of the sixth sense, gut instinct, psychic information. Oh, it's been a delight. I've got so much to share. Look, I do private consultations as well. If you want to learn more about me, kimforrester.net. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at I am Kim Forrester. And this is my passion and my joy. If you have any personal questions you want to know, please reach out to me. While we're waiting for questions to come in, Michael, what do you want to know?
Well, I just wanted to give a quick shout out on your book, because when I read it, I really enjoyed reading. I mean, Winston Churchill's story floored me, and I love how you don't reveal who it is in the beginning. Kind of, walking through in the midst of like an escaped prisoner of war, right? And the way he kind of navigated himself to safety, nearly missing death like multiple times. That was a pretty remarkable story. For me, I'm someone who is on the realm of, I believe that there are people who have very strong intuition, have very good gut sense. And I waver between, like, I want to believe that, I believe that we're all very interconnected, and that everything is, very much impacting another, whether we're near each other or not. For some reason, I have a block with believing that, like, being able to see the future is possible, seeing the future is possible. So I'm somewhere on the spectrum there of understanding it. And since I read your book and kind of explored it a little more, I picked up on things like, for example, I believe that my older daughter has a very good gut instinct for things. Like, she will tell me to, like, bring a coat or to pack something or to go and, like, 90% of the time when I listen to her, it ends up being a really good decision. So I wonder if it's just her saying what's on her mind, or if she's actually has some type of intuition that she's tapped into. And so I wonder if you think someone has an inclination towards something like that, are there things you could do to help nurture that strong intuition or gut instinct?
Absolutely. Well, so we all have it, but it is a natural skill. And Deanna, I will get to your question very, very soon. But because it is a natural skill, we all have various inclinations towards it, as you say, skill levels in it. So some people will pick up this information more readily than others, but we can all be trained to the point. It's like some people are Beyonce, right? And then some people can't really hold a tune very well. But we can all train our voice to sing to the best of our ability. Well, the same is true with our psi connection. With my children, I just let it be. You don't, the worst thing you can do is, like, just dismiss it outright, because the conscious brain will go, that, whenever I use this information, it brings me negative feedback. So therefore, I'm not ever going to use this information. The other thing that you really don't want to do is, like, make it a big thing. It is a natural phenomenon. It is natural. It is as natural as singing. And you might say, wow, you're so intuitive. I really, in the same way, if your child was great at long distance running or singing, you can praise it and encourage it. And because it's a natural ability, I find that it naturally strengthens the more you use it and the more you trust it. It's all about the trust. Yeah. So if you can start showing trust in your daughter's information, it certainly would show feedback to her. Yeah. The time thing. We've been brought up in a generation that believes that time is flows in one direction. There's
Mm.
an understanding now that that's not quite true. I mean, we've got all these beautiful movies like was Interstellar came out and told us that time is malleable. Albert Einstein said that
Mm.
you know, the past, the present, and future are illusions, albeit very persistent ones. Time is, yeah. And there is a researcher called Daryl Bem who did a 9-year study into being able to predict the future, and he had some really remarkable results about people whose bodies were reacting to images before they popped up on the screen. So, you know, our body is reacting to something before we're, yeah, which is being able to, he also showed that you can actually learn, you can learn information for the past. So what I mean by that is that he would test people on a bunch of words, and then he would go away and he would let them memorize. He'd test them on a bunch of 50 words, and he would go away and let them memorize 10 of those words. And the 10 words that they had memorized in the future, they would remember in the past when they did the test. That just blew your mind. Deanne, are there reputable schools? No, there's not. Well, not really. There are fairly wonderful, reputable people that I would recommend. One of them is called Kim Carey. She's on Intuitive View on YouTube. If you just search Intuitive View on YouTube, you'll find her. But this is the problem, is that we've lived in this story that psychic ability is a gift that is bestowed on a few people, and therefore a person has one psychic dream or gets a flash of a premonition and they go, oh, I'm psychic and this is supposed to be my career. But so I'm trying to sort of change that and say, well, in Australia, I actually tried to start up an association where people in the industry adhered to a code of conduct, and where there was particular training, and where people would come to those practitioners and know that they were being treated with the utmost dignity and respect, not just getting information, but also being held in a safe space, and not sharing information that was going to alarm or harm anyone emotionally. But the industry wasn't quite ready for that. I think as science comes about and this becomes more natural and mainstream, then we will start demanding as consumers that our practitioners are actually qualified, that we have schools, that we can start training people in this information in ways that then we can weed out the frauds and the people who have one psychic dream and then go on to become a reader because they think that they've got the gift. It's not a gift, it's a skill that we have to train. And then there are a whole lot of other facets of being a counsellor to people that we need to look into and adhere to. Indeed, see this idea exactly that we are a spiritual being in a physical body. We can put that scientifically and say, yes, if there is a super consciousness up there, if we are all one on a conscious level, and we are individualizations of that oneness. Yeah, and hello, Carol. Hey, I see you. And it also leans into this idea that consciousness is actually embedded in physicality. So we are physical beings. We are also highly conscious beings. We think our consciousness is in our brain because that's where we tend to see or hear the world, right? So we put it in our head. But this researchers now know that our gut actually speaks to us. Our gut sends signals to our brain through the vagus nerve when we are in danger. The information that the brain that is telling us that we're about to enter a dangerous situation comes from our gut, not our head. It gets sent the other way. I know, it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. But I mean, there's so many. The case is strong. It's very strong that something exists that we're not logically or rationally able to perceive or explain always. Like the physical responses that you mentioned, like that's a very clear indication that everything that we're perceiving is clearly not something that we're consciously observing or understanding. That definitely spoke to me.
And Michael, I mean, I love you saying that, you know, the case is strong. This is not the first time in human history that a conversation like this has gone on, maybe in different forums and different people. But in 1796 in Paris, you had a bunch of wealthy white Frenchmen sitting around, scientists saying, the case is very strong for the rocks falling from the sky. So this is not the first conversation that we've had around the changing of our paradigms, and it will not be the last.
Fascinating. Amazing. Well, thank you for sticking around with us a little bit later and indulging this community. Such a fascinating topic. I know there's a lot more we can discuss here. We're gonna create a post, like I said, in the Holsey community with more notes and resources. And Kim, maybe we'll be able to tap you in there in case any questions come up for some follow-up questions there. Amazing.
Please do check out my book if you're interested in like easing into it, and the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, IONS. If you want to just throw yourself into some really fascinating science, if you want to feel a little more comfortable with allowing this to be a part of your reality in an intellectual sense, then I would suggest you head over that way as well.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you all for joining us. Can't wait for next time.
See you all. Thank you for being here. Bye.